Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this week's episode of The Consented Narrative. We will be looking at The Fine Art of Invisible Detection by Robert Goddard. Now, this book it's a weird one how I heard about it. So ages ago, I don't know if it's still running because we only watched one episode and I was bored. There was like a book club thing on BBC iPlayer. I think it was BBC iPlayer. I can't remember what it was, but I thought I'd give it a go because I always like trying to find new books and sort of like trying new things. And as the Facebook group as well, which is many of my book reviews have come from that Facebook group. So I watched this episode, and a lot of the books that they were reading or have read, I'd already read. So I was like, okay. But they mentioned this one, and I was like, you know what? I'll give it a go. I'll see what happens. So essentially, it follows this woman called Umiko Wada, and she is a personal assistant to a detective. Now they're based in Tokyo, and she's just an assistant to the detective, and she goes off and does a little bits for this detective, and she ends up in London trying to help on this case that he's working on, and suddenly her boss is killed. So she's out of a job, but she's onto this case, and she's trying to figure out why he was killed, knowing that basically she is alone in London and trying to figure out this age-old mystery. And it should have been a simple task, but it turns out to be so much more complicated than it is. And oh my god, it was so satisfying. It was such a satisfying read. So it follows her on her travels, and she's sort of like going through London, and she's going back and forth, and she's meeting all these people, and she's unraveling this case, because it's about this person that thinks that they're looking for someone that their dad knew way back when. And he's an Englishman, and they're like, oh, okay, we're finding that out. And oh my god, you know what it's like when you pull on a string and you start unraveling something and it just keeps going and going and going and going. And I was like, well done. But the thing is, though, it never at any point during the story did it feel ridiculous. Because sometimes you find in detective novels, especially, you know, they're trying to like one up, and they're trying to be like, oh, but little did they know that the person they'd sat next to on the train, whatever, was actually blah, blah, and you're like, come on. But this one never actually at any point felt ridiculous. It felt really true to the story, true to the character, and I was like, oh, okay. And when you're following the story, you're going, I could see how this could happen, I could see how this could lead on from this, and so on and so forth. And it was so satisfying to read. It was so satisfying to see sort of like all those twists and turns, to learn all the sometimes I was there a little bit ahead of it, I'm not gonna lie. Obviously I read many detective books, many detective films and TV shows I watch, so I was a bit like, okay, right, I bet so and so is so and so, and they're like, oh, by the way, so and so is so and so, and I'm like, haha, called it. But it never felt like, you know how sometimes when you do figure out who the killer is or whatever, or you figure out who the person is that they're searching for, you're like, now it's just all guff until it's revealed. But this, even when I was like, oh, well, this is this, and still building up to it, I was like, oh, this is still really enjoyable. And honestly, I struggle to put it down, to be perfectly honest, because I really enjoyed reading it. I really enjoyed the character of Umiko. Like, she seemed like a really nice, well-rounded character. She seemed very sensible and down to earth, and it just felt, I don't know, like I felt like I was like, oh, do you know what? I really like her. Like, I'd love to see how she's doing. And apparently it is a series of books. So, you know, I'm not going to say any of the plot in regards to literally just read it, because it's such a good detective story. And I love the fact that it's a detective story where the detective gets killed straight away, and so the assistant becomes the detective, which is really enjoyable. But yeah, so it gets a 4 out of 5 from me. It probably would get a 5 out of 5, but there were some points, although, as I said, it was believable, there were some points that I was like, I feel like this is a bit too much. So sometimes it was like this and then this and then this, and although it is believable, you're sort of like, okay, give them a break, do you know what I mean? But I did really enjoy it. So give it a go. Download it on your Kindle, buy it in paperback, hardback, borrow it from your local library, whatever you want to do. Just give it a read. It's a very thoroughly enjoyable read. And if you end up reading the series because of this book, let me know. So don't forget to click subscribe so you're alerted whenever a new video comes out. Thank you so much for all your continued support, and remember to always keep it contento.